faithfully delivering value, exploring great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally Talks Books. I'm the narrator for this book. Dear listeners, today we're exploring the introvert advantage. Are you an introvert? For example, do you prefer being alone when resting rather than with big groups? When chatting with others, do you usually end up being the listener? Do you dislike rushing through things? Do you think before speaking instead of blurting out? Do you often come across as quiet and reserved? If these sound familiar, you might have an introverted personality. Of course, both extroverts and introverts can show these traits just to different degrees. Even very extroverted people can display introverted traits in certain situations. Now, you might be chatty with friends, but feel awkward in new settings, unsure how to approach strangers. Many in modern society see introversion as a disadvantage for friendships, business, or interviews. So, what do scientists say about this? Is introversion truly a bad thing? In The Introvert Advantage, author Marty Laney provides rigorous scientific analysis of introversion. She argues people hold biased views about introverts. In fact, when leveraged right, introverts bring unique strengths to work and life. Delaney is an American psychologist, clinical therapist, and scholar specializing in introversion. But she's also written books like The Introvert Survival Guide and Discovering the Gifts of the Introverted Child. Laney's fascination with introversion stems from her own deeply introverted nature. And she writes, I never knew if I was extroverted or introverted. I'd want to share ideas, but when speaking publicly, my mind went blank. My heart would pound, raising my hand in class. When called on, I'd forget everything and just want to hide. He thought he was a very quiet and introverted person. Then at other times, when he encountered topics he was interested in, he could be very lively and talkative. In social situations, he sometimes felt awkward, preferring to stay at home and avoid interactions. But other times, it seemed he could have fun with others. These very questions made Lady feel deeply confused. After years of research, he discovered that these introverted psychological states are actually normal and meaningful. In The Introvert Advantage, Laney explains how introverts can handle various relationships in life to achieve better results. She also offers some simple methods to make your life more harmonious and fulfilling. Next, I'll interpret this book for you in the following 4 parts. First, what is introversion and how is an introverted personality formed? Second, what advantages do introverts have? Third, how can introverts leverage their own strengths? Fourth, how can introverts better handle various relationships in daily life? All right, let's start with the first question. What is introversion? Introversion is a very common personality trait. It's not a disease, nor does it mean being aloof or cold. But you can't change it. Many public figures also have introverted personalities. For example, the 16th U.S. President Lincoln, basketball star Michael Jordan, inventor Edison, and Britain's Prince William. Prince William's personality is sensitive and contemplative. He dislikes the spotlight, finding attention uncomfortable. So the royal family helps him cope with public pressures. Introverted and extroverted people behave quite differently in many ways. For instance, most extroverts like working in crowded places, making new friends, and living busy lives, whereas introverts prefer being alone, quietly, thinking deeply, and focusing on problems. Compared to extroverts, introverts don't have many friends, but their relationships are very close. As I mentioned earlier, the author Laney is an introvert, while her husband, Mike, is a typical extrovert. Their vacation preferences differ so much that they take turns choosing destinations. This year it's my choice, next year it'll be yours. One year, her husband, Mike, chose a 9-country tour in 9 days, meaning visiting one country each day. For the introverted Laney, this was simply unbearable. So the next year, Laney chose to visit a historic mining site in Colorado, USA. On the first afternoon there, they stayed in the hotel, sitting by the heater, looking at flyers. Lainey felt very comfortable while Mike was bored and dozed off. In the following days, they mainly visited museums, opera houses, and such. Lainey was quite satisfied, but Mike couldn't wait to ask if they could go somewhere else to have fun. So, what exactly causes these behavioral differences between introverts and extroverts? Is introversion innate? Although scientists' understanding of the brain is still very limited, a common conclusion is that personality varies from person to person and is influenced by genetic factors. One gene that affects personality is the fourth and second gene, also known as the DRD4 gene. The length of this gene affects people's sensitivity to dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain whose main function is to make people feel excitement and stimulation. If a person has a shorter fourth and second gene, they are highly sensitive to dopamine, so they don't need to experience many exciting things. Just being in quiet activities can produce enough dopamine. Such people tend to have introverted personalities. But if a person has a longer fourth and second gene, they are less sensitive to dopamine. So they need to experience more exciting and stimulating lives to produce higher dopamine and meet the body's needs. Such people also tend to be extroverted. Research on people who enjoy sports, like bungee jumping and skydiving, shows that one reason they love these stimulating, novel activities is that they have longer fourth and second genes. Besides genetic differences, studies also found that extroverted and introverted people differ in the flow and direction of blood in the brain. Introverted people have more blood flow to the brain than extroverted people, and the direction of blood flow is more complex. Whereas for extroverted people, the blood flow pathways are shorter and less complex. Therefore, introverted people's brains are more sensitive and they prefer to think things through themselves. Extroverts, on the other hand, focus more on the external world and enjoy receiving new stimuli from outside. That explains what introversion is and how it's formed. Overall, introversion is a personality trait linked to genetics. So if you're an introvert, don't feel ashamed for being quiet and reserved. Even if you seem to work at a slower pace, don't feel guilty or ashamed about it. That said, introverts do face real-life discrimination. Like when thinking before acting gets seen as lacking initiative, or not speaking up in meetings makes bosses think you're uncommitted. Psychologists find that since introverts make up only 1/3 of extroverts' numbers, they often feel pressured to change to fit society's expectations. But author Lainey believes introversion brings many strengths, so introverts shouldn't feel compelled to change. So, what exactly are the advantages of being an introvert? That's the second question I'll address. As mentioned earlier, introverts' preference for quiet activities aids deep thinking. Since they need less external stimulation, they're less distracted and can focus intensely. For instance, when waiting at a restaurant, extroverts might get distracted by crowds, fidgeting, and looking around, while an introvert could sit quietly, completely absorbed in reading a book. Einstein himself credited his achievements to his introverted nature. Einstein was very quiet, but Germany's school system at the time didn't suit him. German schools prized quick, agile responders as smart, but Einstein always hesitated and couldn't answer immediately. So teachers grew impatient with him. For a while, people thought he had intellectual deficits, when really he was just deep in thought. Later, he transferred to a Swiss secondary school with a relaxed, low-pressure learning environment. And also, teachers allowed more free thinking, which helped Einstein rediscover the joy of learning there. Later in life, recalling his childhood schooling, he said, "It's not that I'm so smart, I just stay with problems longer." This shows introverts can excel in suitable environments. Their first advantage, the The second advantage is their persistence, patience, and ability to dive deep into problems. Diane Sawyer, the famous Emmy-winning American TV host, is also a well-known introvert. You might wonder how a TV host facing audiences daily could be introverted. Actually, hosting is her job. It doesn't require an extroverted personality. Diane is typically reserved, cautious, appears distant, dislikes crowds, and others perceive her as cold. But her friends find her delightful. She quietly emails "I miss you" messages. Her introversion hasn't negatively impacted her work. On the contrary, her observant nature and proactive thinking made her renowned for calm, independent reporting. Her specialty is conducting persistent, thorough research when interviewing political figures. She uncovers overlooked issues and finds unique angles. Thus, her surprising interviews made her an industry leader. I've mentioned introvert strengths, but these aren't valued in our extrovert-centric world. So how can introverts leverage their strengths? That brings us to the third question. Many introverts feel their personality is flawed, leading to low self-esteem. So their first step is building confidence. But Lainey notes people often misunderstand confidence through an extroverted lens. She explains how confidence is often equated with quick achievements and external rewards, like promotions, savings, or social status, things that supposedly build self-assurance. But those things actually come from the external world, and you could lose them anytime. For example, if your confidence comes from your spouse and children depending on you, what happens when they leave or no longer need you? Would you feel worthless then? If your confidence is built on running a company that provides jobs for dozens of employees, then when your company goes bankrupt, where will you find confidence? Psychologist Barbara DeAngelis believes people shouldn't base confidence on external factors, but on their inner essence, who you truly are. For instance, do you persistently study to achieve goals or take shortcuts? On encountering new things, do you ignore them or show lasting curiosity? Confidence built on these inner qualities is truly yours. No one can take them away. This applies to all personalities, but is especially vital for introverts. Extroverts may have diverse interests and energy, giving more chances to gain confidence externally. While introverts value their inner world and focus inward, rather than changing habits to fit extroverted lifestyles, introverts should redefine confidence by cultivating inner qualities. All right, I've discussed how introverts build confidence through inner qualities, but this doesn't mean introverts shouldn't adapt to external environments. Introverts may indeed feel out of sync with the world at times. For example, their preference for deep thinking before speaking or acting may seem slow, causing social friction. Such obstacles can undermine confidence and prevent leveraging natural strengths. What should you do in such situations? How can introverts play to their strengths? Author Laney offers two main suggestions. First, maintain your personal rhythm. For introverts, the key isn't speeding up to match others, but establishing your own sustainable pace to achieve goals without burnout. First, notice your body's energy peaks and lows. Tackle the most important or difficult tasks when you're most energized. When your energy dips, switch to simpler tasks. For example, the book describes an artist and psychotherapist whose work involves painting and scientific research. After years observing his energy patterns, he found meeting visitors Monday through Wednesday maximized his efficiency. But starting Thursday, he'd enter rest mode, painting or relaxing alone in the garden. Knowing your rhythms is key, but establishing practical routines matters too. Many introverts accept they can't match extroverts' social circles or activity levels, but that's okay. You'll still have close friends and those bonds run deeper. So if you're introverted, remind yourself, my energy is limited, but that's my nature. Don't stress over countless friends or things I can't change. Next, break work into small chunks. If you have a writing project, writing one page daily means you'll have a book by year's end. By dividing tasks into tiny steps, you can accomplish huge things. This is what I meant about introverts maintaining personal rhythm to leverage strengths. Your pace may be slower, but your persistence often leads to better outcomes. Delaney's second suggestion for introverts is setting personal boundaries. That means learning to say no when appropriate. But why do introverts struggle with this? First, introverts are often compared to extroverts while growing up. Through these comparisons, they're frequently blamed. Over time, this breeds guilt, feeling they're not smart enough or burdening others if things aren't perfect. So, introverts fear saying no, worried it'll invite more blame. Second, introverts are highly observant. So, they're likely very sensitive to tiny verbal slip ups, afraid that saying no might upset others. Therefore, introverts often give in to others, not knowing how to say no to demands. In such cases, a better approach is to offer alternative suggestions when refusing someone. For example, your friend really wants you at a class reunion, but you dislike such lively events and feel bad declining. So you could suggest to your friend that big gatherings tire you out, so you won't go. But you'd love a small meetup with close old friends instead, and your friend might accept this idea. You can also create a plan to practice saying no. At first, it might feel scary and stressful. That's okay. Try thinking before replying. Remind yourself you don't need a quick answer. Give yourself time. You can tell others, I'm not sure yet. By practicing saying no in small things repeatedly, you'll gradually say no naturally in bigger matters. These are Laney's overall tips for introverts. Keep your personal rhythm, set boundaries, and learn to say no bravely. So, how should an introvert handle various relationships in daily life? This is the fourth question we'll cover. Today, I'll focus on how introverts can manage social activities and work relationships. First, let's discuss social activities. For introverts, many can be agonizing, like parties with loud noise and pretending to be enthusiastic with strangers. Rather than draining yourself enduring this, it's comfier to go home, change into PJs, and chill doing nothing. But socializing is key in modern life, and sometimes you must attend gatherings. How should introverts deal with this? First, decide whether to attend a social event or not. Sometimes this might involve a long internal struggle. At this point, ask yourself questions like, will this event help your or your partner's career? And if it's just a colleague gathering at a bar, watching sports, and you dislike noisy settings, it's perfectly fine to skip it. Or ask yourself, will this event put you in the spotlight? Might you be asked to speak publicly? Sometimes you don't need to decline every social event. Going out occasionally to practice social skills is okay. Personally, I really dislike attending company parties. Sometimes when a boss invites colleagues to karaoke, I'll join briefly for 10 to 20 minutes to chat before excusing myself, not wanting to dampen spirits. Earlier, I discussed deciding whether to attend social events. So, how should you handle unavoidable events once you're there? You might relate before entering social settings, you take deep breaths, trying to hype yourself up, pretending to be excited as you walk in, but you don't have to do this. Instead of immediately socializing, take time to observe and acclimate. For example, find a resting spot. Upon entering, sit down, scan the room for familiar faces, then approach them. Prioritize staying comfortable and relaxed. No forced enthusiasm needed. If you really don't want to mingle, you can stay seated and let others approach you. Someone eventually will. Just offer a friendly smile, and someone might stop to chat. The book mentions introvert Patrick attending a DC conference with only standing room where he knew no one. Feeling extremely awkward, he took a deep breath and left the room. He found an upstairs balcony with empty sofas and sat watching the lively scene below. Soon others escaped the noisy room and joined him there. Soon those introverts began chatting at their own comfortable pace. All right, that covers how introverts handle social situations. So, how do introverts interact with others in daily work settings? Introverts often feel undervalued at work. You might feel you're giving your all, but still getting overlooked. Why does this happen? Laney identifies three main reasons. First, reluctance to speak up boldly in meetings. Second, difficulty advocating for yourself and promoting your work. Third, your slower work pace might make others feel you're not keeping up. So, how can introverts overcome these to be more proactive at work? First, addressing that initial issue. How to show colleagues you're actively participating in meetings? Laney believes introverts seem passive because they prefer thinking through ideas in uninterrupted settings than forming opinions, which is hard during live meetings. So she suggests taking notes during meetings to maintain focus. Also, show you're listening through nodding, smiling, or eye contact with colleagues. You still need to speak occasionally. Perhaps ask a thoughtful question or state an opening line confidently, like, I'd like to add something, or my thought is to draw attention. If you haven't fully formed your thoughts, that's okay. Just indicate you'll keep considering it. You could say, I'd like to think more on this and share my ideas later. Uh, Before leaving, thank the meeting organizer and department leaders. Second, how to appropriately self promote. As mentioned earlier, introverts prefer inner reflection over external stimulation. They often don't realize others might value their ideas, making them seem cold or uncooperative. So, introverts should proactively share their thoughts and updates with others. For example, don't be shy about telling your boss which types of projects or tasks interest you. You could also initiate a meeting on a topic you care about or write an article for company social media. When interacting with colleagues, you don't always have to be formal. Share personal info in a relaxed way, like chatting about hobbies while waiting for faxes or getting water in the break room. The third issue, introverts often get criticized for being slow and inefficient. Actually, introverts just prefer taking time to fully consider and evaluate problems before acting. But some extroverts see this as unresponsive or unenthusiastic. So introverts need to show colleagues that while slower, their work quality remains excellent. Author Laney also offers tips for maintaining better focus at work, like planning daily tasks early to avoid energy draining last minute requests. When unexpected things happen, stay calm. Before tackling interruptions, remind yourself you'll return to your rhythm afterward. If colleagues complain you're unresponsive, explain that your silence means deep thinking, not distraction or disregard. Let colleagues know you're engaged with their projects. I've thought about your proposal and have ideas I can share if you'd like. To stay in sync, when you know discussion topics beforehand, prepare thoroughly. Write down key points to deliver concise comments quickly when needed. All right, this concludes our final section on introverts, leveraging strengths at work. Overall, it's about overcoming three challenges: speaking up in meetings, self promotion, and pace perceptions. The second is not knowing how to promote oneself. The third is the slow work pace that draws criticism from colleagues and superiors. Now, let's revisit the key insights from the introvert advantage. Authoritative, foundational. Author Laney sees introversion as a personality trait rooted in genetics. Compared to extroverts, introverts excel at deep thinking, sustained focus, and patient problem solving. Yet, modern society's preference for extroversion means introverts constantly face obstacles that undermine confidence and prevent leveraging natural strengths. Laney advises introverts to maintain personal rhythm, set their own pace, and establish clear boundaries. Learn to say no when needed. More importantly, embrace your nature, understand it, accept it without guilt. True confidence comes not from external achievements, but from your inner qualities. All right, that concludes our exploration of the introvert advantage. Meeting notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.